Welcome back, fan stands, to the Week 5 finals between Izzet Prowess and Valakut lands. Prowess is played by Connor. It's a red-based aggro deck that plays flyers that get pumped up by Prowess triggers, and you keep the opponent off balance just long enough. Meanwhile, Valakut ramp puts a lot of lands quickly into play, and then just burns out the opponent with Valakut. This is game 1. Alright, we have Connor on your left playing the Prowess deck, and Tim on your right with Valakut. Tim gonna lead off with a fetch. It's important to get your green mana as early as possible in this deck, and because it's basically a mono green deck that plays a bunch of mountains for Valakut. So your fetches can fetch your triomes, and which are also mountains. Connor also leads on a triome, Rogran triome. And let's see, does Tim have an early ramp play? Yes, we see Lotus Cobra hit the field. Now, does Connor have a way to deal with it? Does not look like it, but he can get the pressure on with this Storm Chaser Mage. 1/3 with Flying in Haste and Prowess. So hits Tim for 1. Let's see. Tim, no fast mana here, but we can play Harrow. And that's what we'll do. Additional costs, sacrifice this mountain. We'll end up making 2 mana when these mountains enter the battlefield. And it'll be green mana. Probably gonna cast this Oracle of Moldiah from hand. And this'll let Tim keep the cards flowing, specifically the lands. And might as well swing in for 2. Not gonna be able to block that flyer. Connor finds the removal spell just a turn too late, but you can still stop the explosivity of this Lotus Cobra. And we'll keep the beats coming with another Storm Chaser Mage, and we'll bolt the bird. Even though the Oracle costs more mana to deploy, you want to get rid of the snake that can negate the downside of that high mana cost, and Tim would be drawing another Oracle anyway. So here we have a land on top. Going to be able to cast Hour of Promise if we hit an untapped land, which we do. And now we're at the critical 5 mountains point. So any mountain that enters the battlefield from Tim's side of the field will trigger Valakut, and he'll be able to deal 3 damage to any target. With Connor tapped out, this means that those Storm Chaser Mage are quite vulnerable. But even 6 damage to the face is quite threatening. And here's the Hour of Promise. Tim counting the number of mountains they have to show what's available. And we're grabbing a Valakut and a mountain. So we get 1 trigger on each of the Valakuts. Gonna get rid of those mages. And continue the beats. Connor's go ahead. Now we have access to Forbidden Friendship plus Grip of the Royal. But we're probably going to want to get this Storm Chaser Mage down again. The whole deck's built around these Prowess creatures, so you're going to want to have them in play as long as you can while you're doing other things. Because you don't do too much if you're keeping them off balance but not pressuring them at the same time. So Connor planning out what they're going to be doing in the future. Want to make sure you grab the right land so you're not taking too much from these Shivan Reefs. But we've been taking a lot of points off of this. Probably about 5 damage done just from the mana base alone. But here we go. Prowess trigger on the mage plus the dinosaur from Forbidden Friendship. And the lands keep coming for Tim. This is 6 damage, and it looks like it's going straight to Connor's face. We have Burst Lightning, which is just 1 damage away. So Tim will play Mina and Den, who can then bounce a land to hand, and since we have extra land drops, we deal another 6 damage to Connor, and that's game 1 going in Tim's favor. We'll see ya in game 2. All right, we're back into game 2. Connor will be on the play this time, and it looks like we need to resolve a mulligan. Thinking about putting Of One Mind on the bottom. That does represent a Prowess trigger on itself and then more card draw, but favoring disruption in our hand. We get the Of One Mind anyway. And as mentioned before, we want to make sure that we keep the pressure on, because otherwise this disruption doesn't mean much. And here we have Lotus Cobra from Tim, the powerful turn 2 play. The draw is Spreading Seas for the turn, which would have been amazing on this Ketria Tram to keep Tim off of green, but that Cobra can make green even so. Because all the green sources in Tim's deck are going to be tapped. Spreading Seas is from the sideboard, full 4 copies of that one. Not only is it a Prowess trigger for your Prowess creatures, but it cycles itself and disrupts what the Valakut deck's trying to do with their low forest count, and turning off Valakut itself is also important. So Tim also getting a fetch here, so we can get to that all-important 5 mana, and it looks like he has it. Here's Hour of Promise, despite the disruption. And here is the power of the Lotus Cobra in full effect. Now, I've heard some discourse from the pilots of what do you grab with Hour of Promise, and I think most pilots will agree that they like to grab 2 Valakuts the first time around. You just have access to so much ramp within the deck that you might as well get the most bang for your buck and get the game over with. And there, Connor asking how many lands Tim has in play. It's 5, so the Sylvan Advocate isn't huge yet, but this one will be a 4/5. A good addition to the deck to kind of mitigate aggro strategies while also being a formidable threat itself quite early. It's going to be online on turn 4. Connor casting another Spreading Seas and trying to slow down Tim. And 2 or 3 damage a turn isn't a ton, but if there's not much else Tim is doing, it'll get across the finish line. But Tim's still able to chunk in for 4 with this advocate. And here we have yet another spreading seas, so it's unlikely for Tim to get any triggers off at this point unless you've got a Harrow or Mina and Den to pick up your Valakuts under the spreading seas. Connor holding up Spell Pierce and Fire Ice. We can maybe slow the race down with the Sylvan Advocate, or we can Spell Pierce another Hour of Promise. And before combat, Connor will fetch for an untapped source and ice the Advocate. Would have wanted to have that Prowess trigger on their own turn, but that's the great thing about so many cards in this deck is that they cycle. They replace themselves so you can continue to get those triggers. But Gigantha is in play now, and the Elk beats are coming forward. Cast of One Mind. Unfortunately not discounted. All we've got is a human. And finds Forbidden Friendship. So we can put out some chump blockers, prevent 9 damage while getting 3 of our own. The Storm Chaser Mage doing its best Delver DRC impression. So there's 3 damage. Holding these back as blockers. Tim will fetch in the end step. Doesn't currently have any green mana in play, so wants to be able to cast his spells. Though, if it really came down to it, Gigantha could fix the green mana. Here we find an Oath of Nissa. Four mana for our Oracle. Let us draw some extra mountains off the top. With that fetch, we'll be at 5 mountains, so if we find another Valakut, be in business. Tim wondering if they should bring out this Misty or not. Do have other lands in play. You might not be able to fetch because of how low your life total is. So that's why essentially drawing that extra card isn't completely free. This Misty also has to find a Ketria, which Tim is slowly running out of. We see the attack and chump block. Jeggy not getting jiggy with it. And a pass of the turn. That burst lightning on top, putting Connor to a virtual 8. We see a Spell Pierce, a Negate, and Fire Ice from Connor. We're going to ice down this Advocate. just to get some prowess triggers. Not really going to be able to get through all the blockers that we see. Drew into a Storm Chaser Mage, going to attack for 3. And now Tim has to be careful. We've got 2 fetches. He's at 4. If Connor has Burst Lightning, then Tim will be dead. And that's surely what he's thinking about here. He also wants to hold the fetches in case he hits a Valakut. Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle, on the top of Tim's library. Let's put that directly into play. We have a Ramanop Excavator on the top by the beautiful artist Tim himself. That is his creation, his boy. And there's the all-important mountain number 5. We've used our 2 land drops from the Oracle. We're going to Burst Lightning the blocker. Now, this shows this is enough damage to put Connor to 1 and then get a Valakut trigger with a fetch, and Tim wouldn't be dead to a Burst Lightning, so Connor has to fight there. Cannot pierce. And here, Connor is tapped out. We don't have free spells in the format. He's just counting it out. You don't want to play 4 rounds and then make a mistake when you're this close to victory. And so he thinks about an Oath of Nissa and decides against it. Realizes he's counting his mountains, realizes he's at the all-important 5. That this Spreading Seas is on the Catcher Tram, not his Valakut. Maybe hesitating. Doesn't know if there's a Catcher Tram in his deck, but there is right there. And that's a trigger. We'll kill the blocker. So now we've got 4, 5, 6, 11 damage. And we have 1 more Valakut trigger we can get. We'll fetch. Connor playing it out to make sure that there are lands left, and scoops it up. Tim just barely able to hold out long enough and secure the victory.